Probably the most times that I get something escalated to me or questions asked is, how can I get more broadband and can I get it more cost effectively? And how soon can I get it more cost effectively? So as part of the efforts with both the working group, because we try to design things that will work for the entire state of Arkansas that meet Arkansas code requirements by state law, part of that also is to look at the next generation of state network. And we try to update you quarterly on that because it's taken a little bit of time to get things in place. And so here today is Don McDaniel, and then following Don, we're going to hear about the video network, and then we're going to enjoy the scenery a little bit. Here's Don.
Push buttons.
Okay, the current state of the network. So current state of the bids. We'll back up. We have awarded. It took a little bit of doing, but we have awarded to AT&T for the core, and then also AT&T, CenturyLink, Cox, and Cox Business Systems and Windstream. We bid both. We wanted Ethernet, but we knew there were probably places from talking about this for 2 or 3 years that some vendors in some areas of the state would not be able to provide Ethernet. So we did say you could bid point-to-point protocol. And a typical example of that would be where AT&T meets another company. Madison County Telephone Company, Huntsville, is an example of that. And but the smaller phone companies, there are meet point situations, part one company, part another. Generally, it's AT&T and somebody. Those are the situations where there are PPP. There will also be some small towns where, at least initially, Ethernet will not be available. But over time, we're hopeful that even those towns, will see Ethernet available. Now, I talked a little bit about availability, but generally on the footprint, instead of showing you a map, in northwest Arkansas, the AT&T incumbent territory, which is most of northwest Arkansas, and at least the part of where the people are, was awarded to Cox Business Systems. I mentioned Madison County Telephone Company as an example. They have Prairie Grove. Those companies like that, those are meet point situations that are awarded to AT&T. AT&T and their incumbent footprint in Little Rock, Lada, Central Arkansas, and Pine Bluff, Lada, they won that. Century in their incumbent territory, which is Russellville and towns around that, Jacksonville, Stuttgart, and all the way up through Mountain Home, Pocahontas. A number of towns and a lot of territory that went to CenturyTel. Windstream in their incumbent territory also, Harrison areas, Glenwood, Miller County, Texarkana, went to them. So those are kind of the areas of the state. We could have awarded to a single provider. We didn't bid it that way, saying it had to be a single provider, because in discussion over 2 or 3 years, it appeared that the cost was going to be more than the state could handle. Plus, we think we would rather deal directly with who's providing the service, because we knew that one company obviously didn't have facilities in all these addresses, so these towns and these addresses. So we think it makes sense to do what we've historically done and deal directly with the vendors, award directly to the vendors, and deal directly with them on installation and maybe trouble. Hopefully not trouble, but you never know. Priorities. It seems like we're a little slow getting started, and I could probably agree with that. Part of the issue is we need to take our cost, and we just awarded the last one of these bids on the 22nd of November, so it hasn't been too many days. Take all of our costs and roll those up into rates, because it's not just the vendor cost. The vendor cost to a site, you've got the cost of the core network to apportion out, the cost of getting to, say, the state data center, as an example. Need to get that brought into the rates. So rates are are an issue, and we're hopeful to have that pretty soon. As far as the priority, I know everybody would like more bandwidth for less money. or at least, or maybe the same bandwidth you have today for less money. So it could work that way too, of course. From talking to the vendors, they at least AT&T, I'll use them as an example, they've got to build out their network to provide Ethernet. And they would like to see orders in a town, in an exchange. They would like to see a number of orders for various agencies that are in that town. That way, if there are locations that cannot be served on copper, and we're going to be doing some Ethernet over copper, I know we'd all love to have fiber, but fiber is not ubiquitous, unfortunately, not in AT&T territory. And so there will be some on the shorter loops will be over copper, multiple copper pairs. But if there is construction, we put in the bid, if there is construction that the vendor expects us to pay for, any kind of excess construction, we're saying we don't have any money in this bid. We didn't bid that. So that would be, we would have to go back to bid again. So we're hopeful we can package things together. We've done a little of this already in Little Rock where we have a contract for Ethernet, and package things together where there's maybe construction on one and 2 or 3, 4, 5 others that don't require any construction, and then AT&T, in this example, would just provide that and not expect us to pay for any excess construction. So facility availability and agency need, I know y'all want the service, but we need to come to you with the rates and what you're using today, a graph of your usage, and let you make a decision on what you want, and we want to package some of these together in an exchange, in a town, and get the vendors to move in that regard. So really there are two types of, I don't think that's the latest slide, but that'll work. I think it's actually backwards. But anyway, there are two types of services. There would be, an example is, Derek Brown is here from Pulaski County Special School District. We've been talking to them about basically switched Ethernet, connecting all of their schools, all PCSSD schools, to the division office out on East Dixon Road. And so that would be a situation where there really is no core piece to that. And that's pretty inexpensive, I think. I think Derek will agree with that. We've got to bring the Jacksonville part of their district in. That'll be a little bit more expensive because there's some cost to get between Jacksonville and Little Rock, and then CenturyLink's rates in Jacksonville will be different than AT&T's rates. The other is core services. We kind of talked about there will be some cost that has to get worked into the rates, where it's not just connecting sites, one site to, or a number of sites to one site. Core services will also involve the DR part, disaster recovery, so you can get to other locations, to get to SunGuard, for example. The process. I mentioned a little bit, but our folks, CRM folks, will be out soon, talk to you about what's available, what do you want to do, so we can get some orders placed. So we will also there'll be a fair amount of dealing with the local contact or whoever you want us to deal with at your local site. So we will, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in another slide. Today we issue an order for a T1, Braden T1, ATM T1. We say, talk to the local contact, and if they want it extended or need it extended, just extend it. Well, you can extend T1s. There are some limitations, but generally it's not very great. But here we're talking about a situation where we might need Cat 5. For a simple term, we'll use that extended. We're hopeful that we can connect to the network at the DMARC, that the router can be placed at the DMARC. We know that's not always possible. So we're going to have to know more than we know today about what needs to be extended, because at least AT&T says they're not going to extend Cat 5, where they do extend T1s today. So we're going to need more information. So we're going to need some site survey kind of information before we get started too far at each site. Cox, the good news about Cox, they don't have all the telecom rules, or the rules that apply to telecoms don't apply to them. So they said there's going to be a fiber-based solution, and that's a good thing too. No Ethernet over copper. And they're going to place the fiber where the router is going to be. They can place their demarc equipment anywhere, which is a very, very good thing for us. We're going to use Cox, our plan is to use Cox and Windstream, and we're talking to Century about letting them do the router install. Today, the vendor installed, well, we've done a little bit of this with Windstream, see how it's going to work. It's worked fairly well, but we think we need to take it one step further, and besides this project, instead of just having the vendor put in the new circuit, we're paying for the new circuit starting at that point. The old circuit we're still paying for, and then we have to send somebody from Little Rock to install the router. If the vendor can install the router while they're out there, that kind of makes sense. Cox has said they'll do it. As like Windstream has said they'll do it. Century we're discussing that with. I think that'll all work out. AT&T is not going to happen. And they said they could do it, but it's very expensive. So we'll be dispatching somebody from Little Rock. But I guess my point is, we're going to be pre-configuring the router, putting it in a box, a big enough box to be able to ship the old router back, sending it to the local contact. The vendor will install the router, call before they go, install the router, cut it over, hopefully everything will be fine, or at least we can get into the router, and if there's a problem, we can fix it from here, and put the old router back in the box, and we'll have a prepaid label in the box, and we'll ask you to have your local folks put the label on the box and call FedEx or UPS. I don't remember who we're using. I think it's UPS actually, and to pick it up and it'll come back to our warehouse. So we will need your help in that regard. Where are we? We've ordered to start this. We're going to start in Northwest Arkansas. Cox it's new business for Cox. They're hot to get on it. So we've ordered gigabit Ethernet connection between the band building, which is our point of presence, band building, University of Arkansas Fayetteville. So we've ordered that. We've ordered to the core, connection to the core, one from Mac to the core. Those are, we had hoped to get them by the end of December. So we're still hopeful. Provisional rates, being worked on. We'll have the Ethernet rates. Hopefully we'll have something maybe by the end of the week at least to start that process. Then we've got to work on the PPP rates. But that's coming pretty quickly. So we're hopeful we'll be out talking to you soon. I mentioned Cox. Their move, we had some contracts with Cox, and separate bids for about 8 different locations. They're all schools except one health site for Warren, and Cox wants to convert that to the new network, a single gig connection to, at least initially, a single gig connection to the band building, and get all these point-to-point circuits, Ethernet circuits disconnected. So they're working on that. I don't know if we're going to get that done between now and when schools break for Christmas, because it's kind of a problem. 2 weeks there, they're just gone. So, and all but one of the sites are schools. The vendors are providing us the sites that they qualified through the bid, where it's Ethernet over copper, which is primarily an AT&T thing. They're giving us the loop links, and we've got a chart that says what speed we can get at that address, or whether everybody plays fiber. So we're going to base that against everything else to say this is what we can provide at this location, and this is what it costs. So again, I mentioned the CRM. Our CRM folks will be starting that soon. Any questions? I ran through that fairly quickly.
Got a question down here, Don.
Yes, sir.
Don, have you looked at the quality of service on the Century Tail and Century Lane, what they're going to do for you? The reason I ask is I've got locations around the state, and that's really the toughest people I deal with. Is those two Cox fine? AT&T, Windstream, no problem. Those two are.
That's good. Well, I'm glad that the question is that do we have any information, or have we noticed any issue with the CenturyLink on quality of service issues? And we're doing very little Ethernet with CenturyLink, but that's a good point. I'm sure we'll take that in consideration. Unfortunately, they're our highest cost provider too, so we'll work on it. Anything else?